everyone just wants to be treated as equal, but you also have to understand that people also want to be met at the same standard.
And those people that are in power need to be able to actually put their money where their mouth is.
I think like being tone deaf in this industry is like a killer. I always try to get away from just like a box being checked.
I think ultimately it just gives like an open space. It provides the opportunity. I think everyone just wants to be treated as equal, but you also have to understand that people also want to be met at the same standard. So it kind of gets into a form of equality in a sense.
I've read it's like making sure everyone has a seat at the table is like the diversity part, but the inclusion is like making sure like everyone's seat works or like is at the table at the right level or doesn't have like a squeaky wheel. It's like everyone needs to be there, but it also needs to be, like you said, like an inclusive and safe space as well.
I think for the industry in general, when you think of it from a business perspective, how you put forth work for your clients is really important. So if you don't have a diverse team at an agency in advertising as an industry in and of itself, how can the messaging and branding for client work be the best that it can be?
When we think of advertising, we understand that representation matters. We know that whether it's stakeholders, whether it's the clients that we're dealing with, we always want to ensure that the models that are represented in the ads that we're creating are representative of the population that is going to be interacting with that ad or interacting with that product.
So much of what we do is collaborative, and all of our different experiences and upbringings and cultures and what makes us unique just builds on that.
And I think that with that, diversity kind of gives way to more creativity and more innovation. And if we refuse to have more diverse teams or attract more diverse teams, I think we're kind of limiting ourselves with what kind of work that we could put out there.
Yeah.
Well, I can speak for myself when I said when I first started, it was predominantly white and male in the entire industry, really. And the main challenges that you're always going to face as a person that's not part of the majority is feeling a little lonely.
I think I had a very similar challenge too, just knowing that the industry is segmented not necessarily more towards minority or marginalized communities, and knowing that it's a predominantly white space. And so trying to break into this industry was just hard, mainly from like an access standpoint. So if you didn't go to a lot of like bigger institutions for college, like you might not have had access to some of the higher level type internships. So as you're trying to navigate these experiences and trying to network, it's hard when you're trying to network with groups of people who don't look like you, but who already have in mind the type of candidate that they want.
I would say as, a senior leader at this discussion, emphasis on senior, I joke, I jest, but I think ageism is a big issue in the industry. So people tend to, age out. It's a young business. And there's a reason it's a young business. And I get all of those reasons. But I also see a shift in agency cultures. So to me, it's a really great marriage when you have people of all ages and backgrounds, because you get to learn from each other. What better opportunity is there for, great thinking and great minds at the table?
I look back at like me growing up, just not seeing a lot of people that looked like me on TV and movies and advertisements. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Like, it's something that's kind of come to light for me as I've gotten older, gotten into the HR space and this D&I space. So I would just say having the resources, like making sure your company is providing those resources to these individuals to feel supported, both inside and outside the workplace, is something that we can do to support people.
And see steps taken beyond the verbalization, right?
Yeah.
You need a safe space to talk about what you're experiencing, but you also want to see action taken if that's needed.
Yeah, because
and
if there's no
appropriate.
action, then
then why
it
bother?
feels humiliating.
And what kind of message does that send, right?
Right.
Ultimately, change has to be top down if there's any staying power behind it. So kind of jumping off the previous question we were discussing about advocacy and being able to voice our concerns, but then also have it be met with action. And obviously we can do our part as well and help other people and advocate for them as well. But a big part of that, I believe, does have to come from the leadership and have a solid investment in it.
I think strategic partnerships are like definitely helpful. We've worked with like black stock footage where there's like a big underrepresentation of like people of color just in stock footage, which is like something that we deal with a lot. So if there's like more, diverse groups other than us just trying to get, non-white people in front of the camera.
I always think of access, and I think of how we want to bring in more people. I think we also have to think about, how, as you said, the strategic partnerships. It's like, how are we going out and about to get these people in? And also, how are we looking to retain them? Because I think it's easy to bring people in, but like, how can we keep them here? For me, I just always think of access and think of education, but then also, like, again, how are we going out to the communities? How are we going out to these different institutions to like bring these students in and get them knowledgeable? I'll be honest, I have a lot of friends who are in the industry too, and we didn't really know anything about the advertising industry.
I think also from a leadership or supervisor role, giving grace to those people and making sure that we're kind of upholding also this like growth mindset and like growth aspect within them so that they don't leave or get discouraged and decide this isn't for me when it could be.
I think listening to the cultures, understanding, getting insight from the people you're actually marketing to, creating advertising for. Those insights will create great work every single time if you listen to them.
So for example, if we were trying to do a piece for the Black community and the people behind that piece are all white, it's not going to be an authentic portrayal of that culture because it's just going to be an outsider's perspective telling other people what they think that culture is.
I think like being tone deaf in this industry is like a killer. We obviously want to be like profitable and successful and do great work. I think like including those voices, not only internally but externally, just makes, ultimately the end product that much better.
It has to come from a sincere space and a actual want to do good instead of, jumping on the bandwagon and having a diversity movement or an equality movement just because everybody else is.
I think the first step is just understanding and accepting that everyone has biases already in their head. It's just human nature. It's in all of us, whether we want it to be or not. So finding ways to kind of stop and take a step back to realize what we can do to mitigate those biases can kind of help with any decision making that happens.
We're talking about diversity. Are there any things you guys think about that we did not speak on today?
Absolutely. I think we didn't really touch on anything about people who may have disabilities or people who are in the neurodivergent space. With that being like more and more prevalent and people finding out now because we have more research on that they may be neurodivergent. Making sure that we have ads that, if needed, can be geared to them and that authentically represent how they function, who they are.
You sort of started, or didn't really get to touch on like the LGBTQ community. And from a production side too, it's like I always try to get away from just like a box being checked. It's like making sure that it's like they're in there not just serve as a checkbox to be like, we did it, that it's like serving the purpose of the story that we're trying to tell as
You
well.
can always tell. It's really transparent when there's no purpose.
Right.
Other than
Everyone's just like
Checking that
ethnically
box.
ambiguous to like
Exactly.
check all the boxes with one person. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
like I see what you're trying to do and it's a step in the right direction, but just making sure it's like not
Authentic.
tone deaf and it's authentic.
I think authenticity just is like the main word that we've all said today. Is like we don't want to see an ad where it just comes off as if it's surface level. And I think also to what Celeste had said, just about like the neurodivergent community, and also just knowing that like whenever we are creating our assets and we're like taking back to our clients, just letting them know that, it's okay to put closed captioning in a lot of these things, and just for those who might be hard of hearing. Like, for example, my grandma was completely deaf, so like closed captioning is all she knows. So every time I sit with her, I don't listen to it with the sound on when I'm at her house. I completely just turn off. She's like, "Oh, do you want to listen to it?" I'm like, "I've been over for 2 hours." I'm like, "I'm good." I'm good. I'm just keep watching the closed captions.
All right.